Good morning. It is Wednesday, December 18th. I don't know how we got here. I don't know how the year has gone by this fast. We're still reading Etgar Keret's The 7 Good Years, and we did year 4 today. And it's good to see everyone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. We have about half and half. Janice says hello. I got to put on my chat. People on Zoom, please use the raise hand function, which is it's under apps. No, it's not. It's not apps. Wait, it's under React.
React.
Right.
The email you sent me said
But
you would do
you-
year 3.
What?
The email you
Wait,
sent.
was that 3? That was from last. Sorry.
Well, now I haven't read what.
Okay. Well,
It's fine. You'll be fine.
I know, it's just.
when you
You know what?
Are we on 3 or 4?
Right, you're
What?
we just did we're doing your thing.
no, we're doing year 4. We did
Oh,
year 3.
no, I
We're
know
doing
it's
year 3.
December 18th.
Year 3.
Go down at the playground.
Okay, year 3. Year 3.
I mean, I was like, wait.
No, it's year 3.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Well, I sent the right thing out. Anyway, under React, you don't want the thumbs up like that because that doesn't stay up. But you want the raise hand. Okay,
Okay.
because sometimes it's just hard for me to see
Yeah.
who said what when. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Throw down.
I hope
It
you
was year
read
3.
these.
What? Yes, I have. Look, I've got.
I got it.
So throw down at the playground. I thought that it was very interesting because obviously he's I don't know what the politically correct term, I call them house husbands, but
That's
Yeah.
what they used to call them.
Stay-at-home dads. Yeah.
Work at home dad, so we'll have time for the children.
Right, because he is working. I mean, he has a full-time job. And he's dubbed Ha'aba. He's dubbed the father because he's the only. Now, let's remember this was 10 years ago. I'm sure that's changed. And I believe that after COVID, everything has changed. The people during COVID, we had to work from home and people still work from home. My husband has an office downtown. He goes downtown once a week. I'm like, hey, maybe you should go downtown another week. Would it be so bad? Anyway, Alice.
Yeah, I thought this story for me epitomized why I like this book. It was about a very everyday thing, parents at a playground. And even though he's a father, I think all of us can probably remember going to the playground with our kids and the conversations you had with fathers or mothers, whatever. It was mostly mothers when I was doing it. And so it's rooted in a very everyday thing, but they're talking about a very serious subject about army service in Israel and what that means. And then when it goes to where he and his wife are arguing and his son says, Daddy, why are you and Mommy fighting? And that's on the last page. We're not really fighting. This isn't a real fight. It's just a drill. I just think he gets the heart of very serious subjects in a very humanistic and humorous way. For me, I just love it.
Right. Lynn.
Couple of things. I think what has not changed from my reading are the assumptions that we make about gender. And that's they see a man with a child at a playground and they decide that they automatically know what he's going to say or what he's going to think and what his role is. And I think that this is still an operation, even though the feminist movement has been very strong and, we're maybe given more respect in some fields. I think that there is this assumption that people make about us and what our role should be or the evolution. I want to say one other thing. Though times have changed, I think that has not changed. What tickled me was the argument, because when Gary and I got married, we said the petty things we're not going to argue about, the big things we're going to argue about. Well,
That's a big thing.
that's a big thing. When they're arguing about this big thing, and we also said, whatever we argue about, we should at the end learn something. There should be learning. If it's just massive arguing, forget it. Well, I love the way they have this compromise. So it's not it doesn't help the topic. I think that it's healthy. And I don't even know if you say arguing. I think it's really a debate about values and how you look at
Philosophies.
life and all of that. So that for me was the essence.
Sue, then Judy.
Well, I really love this story because I really could identify with it. When our first child was born, my husband was in the service. We were overseas, living on an Air Force base. And my husband used to take Jeff to the park all the time. And pushing him, I can still picture in my mind him pushing him on the swings. And it was normal. There was nothing unusual about a man with his child on a playground, especially on this Air Force base.
Because you were on an Air Force base.
What?
Because you were on an Air Force
Yeah,
base,
and
that
it was-
environment encouraged.
And the men were, there was just no difference when you were at a playground with the children. And the other thing that I really liked was their discussion about whether the child would eventually go into the Army or not. Because my husband, who was in the service and loved it and felt it was his duty to do so, and he would be annoyed at all the men that were trying to avoid the draft. And he wasn't drafted. He went in as an officer. But just the same, he felt, what's going on here? And the other thing, when our child got to the point where he had to register for the draft, we just, it was, post-Vietnam. And it was just, it was during Vietnam.
How old is your son?
63. It was during when he was.
I'm 65. It was a little, I didn't have to,
But he,
boys my age didn't have to.
but it was just,
But it was just
no,
post.
we did not want him
Yeah,
going into
we're-
the
yeah.
service because it seemed.
I have
we were
Judy,
afraid.
Judy, Izzy, Alice, Elaine.
What I found
I know, but
terrific about this.
Quick question.
Yes.
Isn't the draft, isn't it mandatory?
I was just
in-
gonna say, it's in a compulsory in Israel?
Not anymore.
Yes.
Oh, in Israel, yes.
Yeah, no, it's
That's what
Israel. So I don't
Yeah, unless
understand
you have
that.
I will, let everybody talk and then I'll talk about the Israeli army.
Yeah.
Go.
What I found delightful about this story was if you're going to talk about compromise and disagreement, do it in a playground. Truly, he could have picked any place and he picked a playground. And
Wait, were
I
they
think
in
the
a playground?
significance of that tells us a lot about him.
Mm-hmm.
So I liked it a lot.
The women.
Izzy.
Yeah, when I read this, I thought, it's compulsory that you have to go into the army in Israel. Not for Reed is a whole different issue. But unless you have a 4F, unless you have some kind of something wrong with you. But I would imagine that this is universal. That every time a baby is born and it's a boy, you look at him and say, oh my God, I know he's going to have to go into compulsory force. We hope there's no war then. And it's universal. But I love the part where he was picturing him as a little boy with all
Yes.
his artillery. And then the only thing is to start saving for a defense attorney. I just think he's got this humor that he puts in it very subtly. And and also I have to say, all the stories I read, everything that he said when he started about the war in Gaza, the war in Lebanon, it's all universal. This was 20 years ago and it's still going exactly same thing going on now, which was been going on for years, but it just hit home when he talked about Gaza, the bomb and the bomb here and there. And this is what he wrote this in 2001 or 2002.
I think 14.
Can I ask
14?
a question? Does that make you sad that the same things are going on now as nothing changes?
No, nothing.
The more things change, the more things stay the same.
Yeah,
Well,
nothing's the same.
I found that very sad.
Very depressing.
Mhm.
The whole, everything that, even the other things we read, it's the same story of conflict and everybody.
I do feel that this story it could have been written yesterday.
Exactly, all of them.
Right. Alice.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. Yes, he's a man at a playground. But to me, that wasn't an important part of the story. He is a man, and he's writing the story. I mean, I love the paragraph on page 52. It goes to a little bit what Izzy was just talking about, where he's talking about diapers and nursing and breast pumps. And he said, well, it's kind of a relief because all my Google alerts are about Iranian nuclear development and Jews plus genocide. So, I mean, again, I think he's using this setting as a way to explain what his feelings are about day-to-day life in Israel, whether you're a man or a woman. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to comment.
I have Elaine, Meryl, and Sandy.
Okay, everybody really said what I was going to say. But what I thought of when I read that first story was today in Israel, you have all of these young people. And when we were in Israel, they looked so babyish on the buses and stuff. And, you don't have a choice. This is their world.
Right.
And, maybe you need to, like they call it relief TV or whatever, the silly TVs that we all watch. And I was thinking, again, nothing has changed. They're all off to war, and this war doesn't look like it's stopping anytime soon.
Just before we go on to Merle and Sandy, the Israeli army is a part of everyone's life. And it's an equalizer because everyone has to go in, except for the Haredi. And I think that most of the people in Israel would like them to go into the army, but they're part of Bibi Netanyahu's base. So he's like, they're exempt. And when you're exempt from the army, and there's ways to do it,
You're dodging.
and the stigma, there's a huge stigma
I wouldn't.
of those people and families and kids. And because, a psych eval, and when you go into the army, you get a profile. And this number is a combination of your intelligence and your physical aptitude. Because the people with the highest profile are going to the Air Force and become, leaders. And once you're in the army, they keep you in the army by giving you more money. They know that they're going to have to keep, part of the nation in a standing army. So and people talk about it. And like, I've always thought about making Aliyah. And like, I wouldn't, at one point when I was very young, I thought I'll go in the army and you'll learn Hebrew and then you have something to talk about and blah, blah, blah. But, and when I went junior year abroad, my parents were very afraid. They said, you have to come home and finish college. I said, well, okay, I'll do that. But I met Arthur there and he's American. So that was the end of that. All right, Merle and then Sandy, then Lynn.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was very naive of him to think that he can just wait about this decision. And it wasn't even his decision to make. He had to talk to his wife. They had to make that decision together. And he was lucky, at least he had an Israeli wife. I know a couple right now from Highland Park. The girl is from Highland Park. She was not Jewish. She converted to Judaism. Her husband, they lived in Israel. She's lived in Israel for 30 years. She's right back in Highland Park now with her children going to Highland Park schools because her son turned 13 and he had his bar mitzvah in Israel and she couldn't face it. She could not think of that boy going to the army. So she convinced her husband to let them move back with their 2 children. The husband continues to work in Israel, comes to Highland Park 1 week every month to visit. And that's reality.
Yeah.
If you have
I
a
mean-
13,
Yeah, in the past, when her kids are Israeli citizens, when they would go back to Israel between the ages of 18 and 23, sometimes they try to conscript them into the army. I don't know if that's changed in 2024. I'll have to find out about that. But, it puts a lot of pressure on those kids about going back.
Can I just add something about that? I have a cousin here, grew up here, 5 kids in the family. They all live in Israel now at post-college, and he is in the IDF. So it's like, so when they said about the choice between the peer group and he obviously did not have a peer group here, but he had his parents pushing him to do like the opposite story.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I have Sandy, Lynn, and then Sue. Sandy, go ahead.
Yeah, things haven't really changed that much in the last 20, 30 years. Girls are expected to go into. My daughter
Yes.
served in the Air Force there. She was sent to an air base down in the Negev, and she served her time in the Air Force. And that was in the early 80s. So she was expected to go in, and she did at 17. The other thing is, whenever there's a family and a child doesn't go in, especially a boy, it's like in Hebrew we call it a busha. It's an embarrassment for the whole family. They never live it down because everyone feels like they're disloyal and not patriotic. Another thing, I went to Israel and served as a volunteer about 8 to 10 years ago, and I was sent to a base where all of the kids were kids with disabilities who had been taken into the army. That was a fairly new thing for Israel. They decided that families that had disabled children shouldn't be made to feel like their kids were any less. So they have a special base where they train these kids. Some are physically disabled, some are mentally disabled, but they go and they wear uniforms, they get training, and they work on things like packing munitions. They work, but on a base where they can do things that are pro-army. And they go home on the weekends in their uniforms, and they're proud. And so this helps many families in Israel who have disabled children.
Yeah, it's a great program. It's a super program. Lynn and then Sue.
Well, this is going to be sort of tangential, but on page 52, and he's at the playground. And let me read this. As a stressed out Jew who considers his momentary survival to be exceptional, not the least bit trivial, and whose daily Google alerts are confined to the narrow territory between Iranian nuclear development and Jews plus genocide, there's nothing more enjoyable than a few tranquil hours spent discussing blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking, you know what? Women have it right. We have peer groups, we have friends, we go out to lunch, we have book club, book groups, we talk. The stress on men, the pressures on men, I realize when I'm reading this, these topics seem mundane, but boy, they're stress relievers. And I'm thinking more about my husband. And
I think we can.
and men, I don't know about you, but men tend to have fewer peer group.
Yeah, I think the young men now have it more than
More.
our generation.
Right.
Absolutely. Our generation worked. And that's what they did. They worked and they came home.
Sue and then Alice. Sue.
So one of the questions I have about this is the parents discussing about whether or not their 3-year-old child is eventually going to be in the army. What happens to him when he's 18? Isn't he an adult and doesn't he make his own decision?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what's going to
I
happen.
said that in there.
And, you know, there's going to be, you know, peer pressure and, you know, they're,
His friends.
yeah.
Hasn't gotten that
So
far.
it seems to me like it's a waste of their time to even
Right.
discuss it.
I mean-
because it's up to the kid.
I think it's not unlike when especially in Highland Park, that you know, talk, where is your kid going to college?
Yeah.
You know, what if something happens or what if, but you know, most of our kids do go to college.
I think parents fantasize and wish and talk about things, even though you don't have control. The child eventually at 18 will make a decision.
Right.
But you talk about, well, what's going to happen to my child when they're little? I mean, that's a normal conversation, even though
Right.
when they get to be whatever age of
Right.
decision, they're going to make their own.
Right.
You still fantasize about, will this child be an Einstein
Yeah,
or
yeah.
will he be a Groucho Marx?
Right.
Janice said, why were the people at the park not concerned about their daughters serving? I think it was just a gendered question, but it's non-gendered in Israel, and the men and the women have to go.
Yeah.
So, and that's not even a
My
thing.
step granddaughter.
Alice, Mary, then Merle,
And then I.
Yeah,
and Lynn.
Lynn, I have to
Yeah.
respectfully disagree with you.
Good.
You keep talking about him as a man. Yes, he is a man, but he's a man and he's an author. And my feeling was, I mean, yes, I saw him as a man. That's what kind of made it a little humorous. No, he's talking about breastfeeding and all that, you know, women stuff. But I didn't see it as like, oh, women have this ability to, you know, talk about things. I saw it as he's an Israeli and that this was like a relief to talk about, you know, what are you doing for your little child rather than talking about, am I going to be bombed, you know, the next day? So I didn't look at it. Yes, he is a man, but I didn't look at it that the story was about gender stuff so much.
Okay, can I answer her? Can I respond?
Just quickly.
Okay.
I have a lot of people and we have to get
I
on to the next
Okay.
story. I'm trying to.
I tend to universalize whatever story I'm reading. And so to me, this argument is someone, I'm going to answer you. The argument may be irrelevant now, but I think throughout every story, I was marking this, there are ethical and moral questions being talked about throughout these stories. And this argument was an ethical, moral story. I mean, argument and their values and their priorities. And I think men and women have those arguments all the time. And I think if this is only about Israel, these stories and Israel questions, it doesn't appeal universally to everyone. So I have to find something that I can relate to. And I think he is making an observation here. Boy, it's nice to have a few tranquil hours. And don't we all say that? Oh my God, I need some space. I need some.
The men
Yeah.
and the women. It's the men
Yeah.
and the women. I mean, I don't see. it's
Oh,
the men
women
and
get
the
more
women.
of an, but women get more of an opportunity to do that, I think, than men do.
They choose to. They choose to. I mean, if I look at my colleagues, the educators who are predominantly women, we get together and we share and we talk. The rabbis who are still predominantly men do not.
Do not.
And even the women who are now the senior rabbis don't, because they're like male rabbis. Anyway, Mary.
Okay, so we're talking about the gender differences.
Yeah.
So he says to his wife, why don't they talk to me about the question? Why did they ask me about this? And why am I not included in this conversation about our son going into the military? And she says, because because they know you'll be understanding and empathetic about nursing, but you'll just be snide when it comes to serving in the army. The point is the men serve, so they have a different perspective and they're worried about it and
No, but the women serve too.
No. But men tend to, you know, you send your son out right on the front line, they're right into the trenches and.
The women are in combat now too.
No, I know that, but this is, you know,
Yeah.
men feel they, you know, that they're on the front line. I think there's a real worry there, you know, about the reality of it. And then and there's a stereotype a little bit, you know.
I agree.
Okay, but number two is that, I've been reading a lot of he writes all the time in the Jerusalem Post. He's just been in the United States, he and his wife. They were in New York at the Jewish Museum speaking and then at some conferences. His theme is that it's very hard to be an Israeli. It's very hard to find, it's always there. It's always a cloud. It's always a problem. He's in the United States. And yes, he's talking about, of course, everybody's talking about what's going on in Israel, but he never has that space. It's very difficult for him. And someone said, aren't you glad you're here? And he goes, well, I've lost the things that anchor me. He says it's going to bringing food to the Gazan border. It's going to help a soldier who's lying in a hospital and just had something amputated at part of the. I mean, this is what he does.
Yeah,
right?
I think
and so it's always in his mind, and he can't quite relax.
I think it's hard. What he's saying is, it's hard for him to be a liberal leaning Israeli.
Oh, no, yes, he said he's very anti the government. I mean, but it's more than that. I think it's trying to live a life.
That's why yeah.
It's trying to live a life that is in turmoil, as you say, I mean, this is the Google things, what's
Right.
going on with, you know, nuclear weapons. The point is that this is a reality in their life. We talk about it, it's pretty removed in many ways. We're not living in Israel. We're not there. But he can't ever shed that.
Yeah.
Everything about his life, whenever you read this, but this is who he is.
Right.
And it's probably very universal to people living in Israel.
Yeah.
I
Merle.
think that's really enlightening.
Yeah. Merle, go ahead.
I saw this as a story about parenthood, whether you're at the park or you're at home, you have the responsibility of making these life-changing decisions for your children. And the family who took the child to the United States from Israel at age 13, that was a preemptive strike. He's going to put down roots here. He's not going to say in a couple of years, oh, can I go back to Israel to be in the army? That is not going to happen because children put down roots, they make friends, they want to stay where they are. So I think
You
that,
never know.
yeah, well, I mean, having met this family, I think that's what's going to
Okay.
happen. But I just think that it's about the responsibility of parents and the power of parenting, and that the decisions you make will change the life of your child one way or another. It's a very heavy story. And setting at the park, you know, there was a little relief there, but very heavy story.
Here. Judy, and then we'll go on to the Swede. Sweet dreams. Okay, going on to sweet dreams.
Welcome to the club.
I thought, if it comes back to you, let me know. It makes us all feel better when you say you forgot. I sit at the table with Arthur and I go, I don't know what I was saying. Israel. So there was an absurd report about demanding that the Swedish prime minister apologize for the story. And Israel responded immediately with the unconventional weapon it keeps hidden away for conflicts of such magnitude, a consumer boycott of IKEA.
Yeah, I love that.
That just made me laugh out loud. And I can Google it, but there is IKEA in Israel. And, you know, if you've been there, it's quite the, it's a lot. It's a lot. But the real Swedish drama began when he realized he might be there for Yom Kippur. And he's trying to explain. And can you imagine, you're the only Jew in the room, you're an Israeli, and you're trying to explain Yom Kippur. And in Israel on Yom Kippur, they are very secular, except for the Haredi. But on Yom Kippur, they do not drive. Sometimes they go to shul, you know, the Orthodox shul that's in their neighborhood. And it's it's a something. And when Israelis come here and, you know, you have to drive to get to your synagogue, they're aghast. They're just aghast. They can't, you know, put two and two together. And that's why when Israelis come here, sometimes, you know, they feel more comfortable in an Orthodox shul because it's all in Hebrew. And that's really, there are some Reform synagogues in Israel, but in the minority. So, you know, and now he's trying to, you know, explain that, Lynn.
Okay. I was raised in a very Reform, as you well know, temple.
Me too.
My thoughts are always on what's the essential, what's the heart of the matter? The fact that he talks about all of these material things, like you can't drive, or you can't do this, or you can't do that. And then he says, but it was also, and to me, that should be the first thing that he talks about. The fact that it was also a day where you're supposed to ask others for forgiveness and do moral stock taking.
Does it?
Okay, stock taking. And when the son says, you know, he starts crying because he doesn't think this should end. And he said the child is right. And this is what I was saying before. Again, he's talking about moral stock taking. The husband and wife are doing moral stock taking, ethical stock. Do you send, you know, the husband and wife arguing about this? And to me, this is the heart of this holiday. And it should be the heart of our society every day,
Yeah.
in every way, is moral and ethical stock taking. And
Yeah.
that to me is the heart, the
Yeah.
heart of the story.
That wasn't beautiful. Alice. No, Alice, and then you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're Alexis, right? I do know your name.
I heard the A, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, again, I felt he was talking about a very serious subject, you know, what Lynn was just saying, what's the meaning of Yom Kippur? And then he says, at the end, where is it? Oh, on page, 58, he says, the Swedes were consumed by envy. You know, they thought it was so great. Oh, no, you don't have to do this and you don't have to do that, blah, 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 blah. This is their eyes were darting around the restaurant, looking at the patrons as if they were searching for a mohel who could cut them a deal to join us.
Cut them a deal.
Deal, I thought that was hysterical.
Cut them a deal.
Cut them a deal, I thought that was hysterical.
It's hysterical. But then
Cut them a deal.
stop and think about, oh, do other people look at some of the things that you do as something that is like, oh, that's really a good thing to do? You know, maybe that's, you know, the way to look at the world. So I just thought in such a humorous way, he was bringing out a serious topic. I just, yeah.
Here.
Another, yeah.
Right. I have Alexis, Merle, Judy. Alexis.
Mine is just very quick in that, and the line where he's talking about that, the streets were closed, everything was quiet, and you get to hear the birds. To me, that's what it's all about, is the quiet and get not only to the nature and listen, it's listening to you, listening to what's around you. So that was the most meaningful.
Shabbat is the same thing too.
Yeah. But again, in Israel, Yom Kippur, the kids kids ride their bicycles down the big highways. I mean, it's a happening. A good thing. All right, Merle.
Well, I thought it was a beautiful story and gave us a different perspective about Yom Kippur because it's not like that here. And I've heard people say on a really bad day, this is almost as bad as Yom Kippur. I've heard people say that because for us, it's fasting, feeling guilty. Some people I've spoken to who are Catholic say it's like you have to ask for forgiveness for all your sins on one day. We get to go once a week, you know.
Keep on sinning.
I thought it was just a beautiful story to see it. Israeli perspective, because here I don't think people feel that way. A day of fasting, a day of guilt, it's a difficult day. And you see people who, of course, people like nursing mothers, they can't even fast. So there's actually more guilt about it because you can't, some people cannot fast. But I thought it was a beautiful story.
Judy, then Abby.
Well, I had a really hard time with this story because the line on page 58, the Swedes listened and were fascinated. I have never told anybody about a Jewish holiday and have them be fascinated.
Well,
They look confused. They look, I haven't maybe described it right. I feel guilt. Yeah, you feel like it's you.
Edgar Keret is a raconteur. You know, some people can describe things. He's a storyteller.
Okay, well, no
And
one
if he
I've
can't
ever
describe
described
it-
it to was fascinated.
Not even Hanukkah?
I never
No.
tried to do Hanukkah.
Judy, you can come and hear me describe things, and then people are like, oh, I want to do that. Abby.
Yeah, I'm just going back to something that Lynn said that reminded me of something that she had mentioned, several books, stories ago. And I don't remember what the book was, but the term about, maybe it was before the election, of course, in terms of a moral conscience. And I've been thinking about that lately because that's something that is just so difficult to measure, both within ourselves and with something else. And then my mind kind of jumped to, in terms of the way we observe and why we observe. And is it because, we feel a mandate to do that? Or is it the judgment of we feel that our peers might make of us if we don't do something? When somebody asked me about, as an example, fasting on Yom Kippur, I just don't want to get into the topic because I feel that it's a measurement. It's like, oh, I did better than you did, and so on and so forth. And that whole thing of comparisons is something that I have to kind of jump out of that little circle that I'm in and saying, wait a second, get out of your head here. They're just asking a question and don't start internalizing it. So I think both compass kind of a thing, as well as the level of observation and how we choose and how we also are judging the next person is just such a murky kind of a thing. And it changes. I think we all change. And I think how we observe and why we observe and choose not to, we have to accept the fact that it's not ground in stone or however you ground it.
I mean, what I would say to that as someone who comes to synagogue a lot, B is paid to, this is my job. I fully admit that, but I get great comfort out of coming to services. When I'm up at camp, we pray twice a day. I love that. It's something that, and I don't, judge anyone, how they come to services or do Shiva or X, Y, and Z. But I do wish that calmness and that, I can literally, feel my heartbeats going down. And, they say that it's good for you. It's good for you to pray and to do all that. And the community and. So, and I think that, I hope that, and I can say this, certainly none of your clergy or your staff here would ever be in judgment or of whatever, however you choose to observe and participate. We just hope you come and make our community and, be a part and do what, makes you feel good.
Very handsome.
Sorry, Mary.
Yes. What really stuck out to me is that, he's annoyed with other Jewish holidays because he has to go to a family thing or
Yeah.
talk to people, whatever. There's a lot of other things, but this is a day that all that's shed because it's about place. It's about being in the community. He wants to be in Israel, on the ground, in that place. And again, I'm going to go back to, because I've done a lot of reading about him. That's one of his big things. He's been asked over and over, why are you going to leave Israel? How do you feel? You're out of Israel now. You really want to go back? And he says, it's about place. He goes, my parents lost their place in Europe. They lost it in Poland. And they taught me that place is important. It's the whole idea of being in Israel, on the ground, walking the streets with others, listening to the birds that live there. It's about the place. It's not about the relatives. It's not about all of that stuff. It's about being in Israel with his family, in the community, and where people are thinking about the important things, not the who's gonna bring the potato salad today? Or why is so-and-so late? Or why didn't so-and-so, why did they say that at the dinner table? It's about the things that really matter.
Right.
And I think that's the beauty of that story.
Agreed. And I think we should go to the matchstick war.
think we should skip it, but we will after.
Wait. I think
Did you
that,
guys like Matchstick War?
oh,
Yes.
Oh, okay.
so there, I mean,
We can save the last one for the next session.
There's
a lot.
I mean, there is a lot in that last one.
last one.
Okay, now okay, so we'll do matchstick war and then I'll put that, but we'll still do another year when we come back again. And I'll tell you what that is when other people are talking. But while fighting in Gaza began, and he's in Beersheba, I have a cousin in Beersheba, and I think this happenstance of how he ran into this old friend of his was absolutely, that is, I mean, that happens
That
to all of
happens.
us. Yes. Right. Who told? Izzy, you told us that story about running into your old camp friends, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's my oldest, newest friend.
Yeah, I mean, and that type of stuff is just, and that would be the same for him, his oldest, newest friend. And of course, I did go down a little bit that he does matchstick. He does matchstick
Sculpture.
sculptures. Right, I couldn't do it. Matchstick.
Stick.
Sculptures.
So of course I had to go look. This isn't the Eiffel Tower, but that's Notre Dame.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
And the whole thing, and that he also had there's the Capitol.
Wow.
I mean, it's kind of funny. It's just, that's what he did. And he had the weapons on the side. That was his other,
Weaponry.
yeah, the weaponry, right.
Museum of Weaponry.
Museum of Weaponry.
Vanessa, why was
Yeah.
he in prison?
Grenades. He stole grenades.
Yeah. He stole a grenade for the Museum of Weaponry.
Yeah.
Len.
To me, this is the essence of an morality story of when he says that now that Beersheba's in rocket range, it has opened up quite a few real estate possibilities.
Yeah, that was funny.
Well, I mean, that's
a reality.
That's a reality.
I know.
Exactly what's happening in Syria. Israel's going into Syria to get.
That's how it works.
They're doing that for Gaza
Right.
too. They want to.
Is there something to be said about how our priorities and values have shifted over time? I mean, I know that this is a different place. They have a different mindset. She's shaking her head. Can I finish before
Yes,
you
go ahead.
then you can shake your head? I just think this guy, his whole
Kobe.
code, his whole moral code is.
Mhm.
However, on the other hand, as Tevye would say, Israelis are really resourceful. I mean, they can make hay out of what. So
Yeah.
that to me was I didn't like this story.
Okay. Elaine.
Okay, two things can be right. I think that in a quote unquote perfect world, we're very moralistic and very hopeful. In today's world, I think people see advantages. And if you take advantage of buying land and all of this, I think this is, yes, a moral question, but I think it's also real life. And I think we are flawed and we try to do good, but people see advantages and see, this, they do it. I mean, they just do
I
it.
totally agree with you. And I think that's why our country is going this.
I'm
way.
not saying you're right. You're wrong. I'm not saying
I
you're
think
wrong.
this guy is a liberal moral guy.
I
And
think
he's
so too.
presenting to us, nothing's saying the United States is going to be thriving and up there and more powerful.
You know what? I've heard people talk.
Forever.
Now, the stock market is doing well because
Good.
Trump is going to be
Same thing.
president.
Oh, no,
And
it's down.
it's down today. I was talking about last week. Okay. And who knows what? I mean,
Time to
everyone.
buy. It's
Yeah.
like the same thing.
Yeah, it's,
Every day is
and
different.
oh, well, that's a
Every day.
good thing. My
Every
money's
day is
worth
different.
more.
Every day is different.
Yeah.
Um,
It
yeah.
just is what it is.
I have Judy then Sandy. Judy.
I think the concept is depressing to me personally, that someone would try to benefit from the angst of other people. However,
It happens.
this story upset me terribly.
Yeah, me too.
Because maybe if I had to live like Kobe, where there were scuds raining down on me daily, maybe I would be different. And the fear that I have is that our country is not looking at every possibility that's optimistic.
Oh, absolutely.
Here, here.
And this story points it out.
I agree.
And it hurt my heart.
Yeah.
They were
I think
gonna
we
see
have to
us
live through
Dead
this.
children and.
Yes.
Sandy then Mary. I unmuted you. Oh, there. Go ahead.
When I talk about Beersheba, I get a little lonesome because I lived in Beersheba for 2 years, and most tours now don't even go into Beersheba. There's a highway that bypasses Beersheba, and many people never get there. But I lived not only in Beersheba, but in what they call Ir HaAtika, which is the ancient city. My address was 3 Trumpeldor. It was off the corner of Trumpeldor and Smolansky.
Sounds like
And so one was the first city next to the desert, and camels would go by with nomads all the time. People, Bedouins riding past our house. Across the street was a very interesting large building. And I always used to say, it looks like it could have been a hotel 1,000 years ago. And then the natives told me that was the brothel in the town. It had been converted in my years there into a bakery, and they made only pita. And when my children would come home from school, if I wasn't home yet from work at the university, Ben Gurion University, the kids would wait outside, and they would often go into this bakery that was run by Arabs. It was owned by a Jewish man, but these young Arab men took my kids in almost daily. They would give them hot pita. They would be so kind to them, give them a bottle of water. And, you know, our experience there was very good. We had good relations with the local Arabs. So thank you for listening.
All right. Mary.
I found this so difficult because of its reality. It's about childhood play, building matchsticks, Eiffel Towers, and bombings. It's about the animals dying because we had no food at the Gaza.
At the zoo.
At the zoo.
But the children are dying.
The children are dying. They're just gonna have to fend for themselves, the children who are being bombed in Gaza. Well, you know, this is the reality check and it's really, and that's why it's difficult, because it's very difficult.
Yeah.
It's very much, oh my goodness.
Corruption of values is that they recognize the suffering of the animals, but not the children. And they were willing to go in and rescue the animals, but the children it's noticed another smaller item, and we're talking about priority.
Yes, and exactly.
Another smaller item without a picture.
Of the children who go.
That the number of children who had died in the bombing of Gaza so far had passed 300.
No, it's the reality of how they're living.
And I have next reality. It is reality. The pathetic thing is that it's reality.
Yes.
That's exactly what's so heartbreaking, is that you can't dress it up. You can't say, well, but, I mean, there's no, it's staring, and the conflict is exactly the same today. There are children starving in Gaza. I mean, this has not changed, and it's heartbreaking to read that. And I found it wrenching because of that. I was like, okay, let's,
Yeah, it's still the same. It's 10 years old, it's still the
It's
same.
not a game. It's not gonna win or lose. This is real life.
But people behind all that suffering, let's get to the motivation of why is this happening?
No.
Why isn't the food getting in there? You know, what,
Us is taking the food.
Second priority.
let's,
Got a priority.
okay.
It's very, very, very complicated. If there was an easy solution, they would have found it. But I agree with Izzy that, you know, those Hamas people are, you know, have as much, you know, water and food and money as they want. And the higher ups are in Qatar. I mean, they're not even in Gaza.
They don't have to face. They
Exactly.
can do their matchstick game.
Exactly.
They collect their weapons. I mean, that's the whole point.
I did, and I put up there, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Green Line. So the Green Line, and especially for liberals like Etgar Keret, if you live within it, because on the other side that you see a green line there. And the reason it's called the Green Line is because when they made the map, somebody used a green marker. And so Beersheba, which is down here, I don't even think Beersheba is within the Green Line. So on the West Bank, and there's a lot of people who buy in the West Bank because it's cheaper, you get more, you know, but that's outside the Green Line. And, you know, those are different types of, those are different things that they have to think about when they're buying property. And it's very expensive there, just as it is, you know, all over the world. And, you know, they don't have that much land.
Tell me about the Green Line. What does that mean?
So the Green Line, and I'll tell you this, and I'm going to Google it so I can get a nice good, but it was a line that was made that if there's a two-state solution outside of the Green Line will be a Palestinian state.
Okay.
It's I said Green Line. And you have to be careful because what AIPAC says about the Green Line is different than what J Street says.
Yes.
And I've taught this to kids, and because I had to go to
Was the ceremony, was the concert where the kids were captured, was that?
in the Green Line, absolutely. In Nova, in the Green Line, outside of Bishop, in the Green Line. The Green Line is the demarcation line, that's a big word, set out in 1949 armistice agreements between the armies of Israel and those of its neighbors, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. After the 48 Arab-Israeli War, it served as the de facto borders of the state of Israel from 1945 until the Six-Day War. And of course, in the Six-Day War, in 6 days, they doubled their, property. And it continues to represent Israel's internationally recognized borders with the two Palestinian territories, the West Bank and Gaza. So the Green Line is something we should all know about and, think about. And somebody, we had an Israel class last year, and we were talking about, somebody asked me, those kibbutzim that Hamas had attacked. I just can't believe it's been over a year and we're still talking about it. Someone said, well, didn't they know where they were living? Those kibbutzim, were founded in the 40s, before all of this was solidified, before there was an Israel. So it is something that you'll, maybe it'll catch your eye as you're looking in the.
I just had a thought.
Yes.
Any of you think about what's going on in our split society now that we could evolve into?
You mean our split American society?
American society.
Oh, God.
They're among us. They're among us.
I mean, how are you gonna do that?
We could have a green line.
All the time.
I have to think
All
about
right,
this.
Judy, and then we'll get.
Yes, we're gonna have
20
I
years
agree.
ago, the Saudi government approached my company. And they asked us, we were the premier photo research firm in the country, in the world. And they approached us to do the photo research for their book that they were going to sell, they were going to give as gifts from Saudi oil. They knew we were Jewish. We debated.
Talk louder.
It was a very difficult decision. It was a very difficult decision. We discussed it for a long time because even 12 years ago, Saudi government wasn't really our friends. we agreed to do the book. I don't know if I would have done it now or after, after the 9/11, okay. But there's no Israel in the book.
Oh,
They
so
have a map.
were you surprised?
I was
Not
upset.
surprised. Yes, well, you should be.
I was not surprised, but I was upset. The entire book, all the pictures, and we couldn't supply pictures with girls in it. I have to tell you, after we did it, I told Roger, we're not doing the second edition. It's not gonna happen. But it was a painful experience.
Yeah.
And an education.
Listen, when Lynn was talking about, are we going into a divided society? Texas, they buy the most textbooks. And so then all of the books are like what they want in Texas. And I don't know what they call the Civil War. It's probably called the war between the states.
Evolution.
Evolution.
They took out the Alamo because they didn't agree with the Alamo story. They took, I can't tell you, I worked on these books for Texas.
And every state is going to be able to write whatever they want in the books.
Exactly.
So the South or whatever is going to teach one thing and the Eastern state, whatever.
Don't hire
It's going to be a
anyone from a red
dichotomy.
state. They're uneducated. Don't hire anyone from a red state.
Right. No, I'm totally agreeing with you,
Yeah.
but what's going to happen is it's going to be split.
It's really,
It's very upsetting. I can't.
Merle.
I just want to tell you, in the South, they call it the War of Northern Aggression.
Oh, that's
right.
That's right.
Thank you.
If you go to a historical museum, you'll see the War of Northern Aggression.
That's a feel good. So I know we have to go. The first Wednesday in January is the 1st. I hope, you're going to be tired. We're closed. So we'll meet on the 15th. I'll send you exactly what we're going to read, the last story in the next chapter. And thank you. Happy New Year. It's good to see everyone. And I think that's it. We're open for Shabbat. We'll be here. I'm going to see my grandkids, so.
That's great.
Yeah, it is fun.
I just said there'll be a new episode on.
Yes, I have a vlog, which is a video blog, and Arthur and I do it, and we talk about how much we love our grandchildren and how much our children try to rein us in and what we do with our children, what we feed them.
You have that?
Yes, the gentle parenting. Anyway, we'll have a whole session on gentle parenting. All right, good to see everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy New Year. Virginia, between the states.